We've
No
talked
worries.
about Hans Island on WhiskyCast before. This has been a dispute for a long time, but why are you guys jumping into this?
I think there are mainly two reasons. One of them is that we make North American inspired whiskey, and as the biggest Danish distillery, we don't like to be involved or be associated with a war, even though it's a gentleman war. We think that whiskey has nothing to do with the dispute between Canada and Denmark about this Hans Island. And I think the second argument is that we find it weird that two modern peace-loving nations as Denmark and Canada has not been able to solve this problem for 90 plus years. And it kind of serves as a, what can I say, if two modern nations are not able to solve a small conflict, how can we then expect other countries to solve much more sincere problems on their behalf? So we think the symbol of Denmark and Canada not being able to agree for 90 plus years is a little bit unnecessary in this world where there's enough bad news with protest in Canada, the whole situation in Russia, Ukraine. So there's a lot of stuff to disagree on. And we think it's time to put an end to this dispute of whiskey war between Denmark and Canada.
And you're willing to stop production at Stauning to do this, right?
Yeah, I think what we are planning to do is that on World Whisky Day, which is the 21st of March, March or May, I don't know right now, we would stop whiskey production and then invite the two governments to Stauning to start the peace negotiations. That is our thinking behind it.
Impressive. I figured you guys would have done this as a way to get the government in Denmark to start putting Stauning whiskey there instead of something else like schnapps or whatever they've been using for 90 years.
Yeah, it could also be, but I spoke to one of the soldiers that left a bottle in 78, and I said it could almost be seen as a provocation to exchange snaps with whiskey. And he laughed and he said, but nobody in Denmark made whiskey in 1798. So I guess that's why they put snaps or aquavit in there instead. Yeah. So I think, in all of this, of course, we realize that Stauning alone stopping whiskey production for a day will not make a dent in the world. So it's more the symbol of us wanting politicians, the ones who can solve this problem, to take it seriously. Because I think it was 3 years ago, the two governments founded this board that should solve the conflict between the two nations. And of course, we also realize that it's a gentleman war and it's done with kind of humor and charm in a way. But back to the 2 points, we don't think whiskey is taking hostage in this conflict. And second, we don't think there should have been a conflict about a territorial dispute for so many years. And I think even as it is charming, what would happen if one of the nations one day came and found a bottle of vodka or mezcal or champagne or anything else? Because now with the climate change, the whole region will become much more important in terms of, as I understand, ships can do a shortcut and save a lot of fuel and so on. So why not solve this conflict in, as lawyers say, you should make your divorce arrangement while you're married and not when you're divorced, meaning that solve the conflict before it's escalating into something different. We don't expect that it will ever be a serious problem, but why don't solve it now when it's in good faith between two peace-loving nations?
Settle it with a coin flip or something like that.
I think we don't actually care who gets what, or if there's a line down the middle, or it's owned half of the year, or whatever the solution is. But it's more the symbol of not being able to agree to something for I think it's 93 years. We think that's a shame and that's too bad.
And this would come if you could get them to come to the distillery just a few weeks before you guys host the World Whisky Forum in June, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that what we are really reaching out to also the industry in Denmark, other distilleries. There are 9 in Denmark in total. And after we posted this, the Canadian embassy invited us into a cup of coffee a few days later. And honestly, we were a little bit unsecure of if they liked it or if they were prepared to sue us or we just ruined a nice progress. But they said that they really liked it. And they too found it weird that it has been taking so long for the two governments to find the solution. And they reassured us that there is progress being made, however, painfully slow. And they actually encouraged us to keep on promoting whiskey peace instead of whiskey war, and will actually actively encourage Canadian distilleries to join the same. So we can demonstrate that we can work across borders put our own interests aside for a moment to share a mission of achieving whiskey peace between the two nations.
Did you hear anything from your own government?
No. So actually, we have now made this, what you call it, official letter you can put in a newspaper for debation and so on. And here we're reaching out to the Danish government saying it's a little bit peculiar that we heard from the Canadian embassy, but we haven't heard anything from the Danish government. And maybe it's because we're too small and we realize that. That's also why we're reaching out to the industry to help apply more pressure. And by pressure, we mean that we want to, raise awareness about it. And the day on World Whisky Day to close down is also a statement to show that we are serious about this. Personally, I would love to see the Danish and Canadian government in Stauning and on the far countryside of Jutland, but I doubt they'll be coming. But for sure, we will host. And I know that a whiskey has been an icebreaker before, and maybe can be it again in this. But we are serious about that it's pointless, meaningless, and in a world that is lacking good news, this could be a good news to introduce for others, governments, but also for private people. If you have a dispute with your neighbor where the fence should be, or you haven't spoken to your brother or anti-waxers or whatever, we all have problems or fallouts in our own life. And I think if Denmark and actually Greenland and Canada can solve this, potentially you could solve your own conflict as well by reaching out and taking the first step. So I think there's more layers to this in a way.